Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Now with me, I have Mr. Jide Ologun, legal practitioner and national development advocate. We're still expecting the arrival of Professor David Aworawo of the University of Lagos. Mr. Ologun, good to have you.
You're welcome,
again
Doctor.
on the show. Well, we have had two guests. The first guest, Shino Kawonishi, talked about the compressed natural gas, which was something introduced by the Tinubu administration to address clean energy challenges and also to provide, cheaper transportation opportunities for Nigerians. Now, 2 days ago, the government said they were reducing transport fare by about 40% to show that the initiative is working. Then Mr. Kaonishi was on this program. He says, no, it's a lie. It's not working. It's a Nollywood act because the kits are overpriced. The presidential natural gas initiative is a fraud, and that in any case, nobody is benefiting from it. And that President Tinubu needs to take a second look at that initiative by way of summary. He also talked about Mayday workers and how he thinks that, look, Nigerian workers have been served the short end of the stick, despite all the excellent good intentions of President Tinubu. And then, of course, we had Mutalabi Ujo Adebayo, SAN, on the program, who also talked about a number of issues. First about, is there a threat of a one-party state? He also talked about the economy. He also talked about the situation in Rivers State, focusing majorly on NBA and the Rivers State administrator. But he said, look, he will plead the Fifth Amendment on that because he's the chief mediator in the conflict between the Nigerian Bar Association and Rivers State. But that is optimistic that the matter will be resolved. And then we talked about the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission and Meta, owners of WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram, with the FCCPC saying, look, Meta is owing Nigeria about $220 million. But Meta has said, no, we're not going to pay. We don't have any issue with privacy laws in Nigeria. So those are some of the issues we have discussed so far.
Thank you, Doctor. Let's start with the CNG matter. I listened keenly, and I expect that if those revelations that were rolled out are false, then I should be called for questioning. And if they are right, the relevant agency should pay attention to it, because this issue of compressed natural gas came up as an alternative to fuel, which will ease transportation and reduce the cost of living on the citizens after the president recalled the fuel subsidy in Nigeria. And then from what we are seeing, it has not been very effective. And of course, according to his narratives, this has been because of the fraudulent activities going on within the stakeholders that are expected to implement this laudable project. And that is one of the challenges we have in Nigeria. I did a study. When you talk about the countries that have the highest fleet of CNG-driven vehicles, you talk about Argentina, you talk about Brazil, you talk about China, and some other countries of the world, and doing well. So one would have expected that Nigeria should have studied those templates before rolling out that project. And if it is right, as he mentioned, that about 100 billion has gone into that project without the positive impact on the intended audience, then we should be concerned. And all these promises to bring down the cost of transportation and this, I think we should embark on concrete revitalization of the Nigerian economy. I talk about the hardware aspect and the software aspect. The hardware aspect are all those policies you are trying to throw in to stabilize and everything. The software aspect is the human aspect, where you have the corruption, abuse of office, and fraud, and what do you call it. And Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended states clearly that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. At a time in this country, we were reading about NNPC spending about 100 billion naira to turn around moribund refineries. So for how long do we go with throwing out policies that the software of those driving those policies will frustrate? Because Nigerians are at the receiving end. So I call on the government to look keenly into all those allegations and see what can be done to bring in accountability. Because whether you like it or not, and it was mentioned today, the World Bank has projected that more citizens will be slipping into the poverty bracket. And we don't want that for Nigeria, that is a resource-rich nation in the world. So we expect the requisite response, positive one from the government in that sector of our national life. And that brings...
But Mr. Logo,
yes.
are you aware that before I came on set, I was receiving messages, some characters telling me that conversation must not take place. I must not do the interview. The kind of insults we get on this job.
No, you don't count it as insults, sir. You know, Habakkuk 2:4 says, the righteous are surrounded by the wicked, so they prevent justice from coming forth. And that is why I also started by challenging the government. There are several, in this country, some characters imported contaminated fuel. And what happened? No consequences. In this country, over 400 suspected sponsors of Boko Haram were identified by the government, not by opposition. What happened to them? In this country, all oil thieves, agents are arrested, vessels, products. But who are the sponsors? And I think one of our discussions today is the insecurity in the north. And I talk more about sponsorship when we come to that. So for those who are phoning you not to discuss it, that is where I'm saying someone has rolled out some revelations. And if this government wants to be listed on the golden side of history, it's just wise that you pay attention to all this. Nigerians are suffering needlessly. I mean, one of the issues mentioned this afternoon is what some countries have done with flared gas. France started experimenting with compressed natural gas as far back as 1850s. What are we talking about? And that's why I rolled out, you know, the case of Qatar was mentioned. Things are working in some countries in this world. So those are issues. So leave those threats aside. It shows that you are touching on important issues. And I hope that we've rested that issue of threat, Doctor. So that brings us to the Worker Day. Let me lay a foundation. The May Day we talk about today and celebrate and Workers' Day has its foundation in the 1880s. You know, you recall the Chicago, do you call it revolution now, calling for 8-hour work day and calling for good welfare for the labor force. It was quite violent. Some labor representatives were arrested, some were taken out, and then thereafter it was established that this labor materials should be recognized, and the labor, which the federal government through our president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces described as the engine behind the national prosperity, should be honored and attended to. And you amplify their welfare. You make life meaningful for them. And we have this International Labour Organization as an organ of the United Nations that was established in 1919 to also promote equity, justice, and fairness in labor practice. But as we speak today, to what extent have we been able to establish justice in labor practice? I lecture on them. Labor laws and some issues. And when we start considering issues there, talking about health, safety, and environment and issues like that, you realize that we are far behind. Perhaps because the labor practice we also have in Nigeria is is entrenched in the foundation of master-servant relationship. And that is why today you find out that the 70,000 naira minimum wage, when you convert it to dollars, it's likely not to be anything. In fact, somebody referred to it as a slave wage. So that is that. So while we celebrate this May Day and the contributions of the labor force to national development, we should also be thinking of equity, and how we can be just to the workers who drive the economy of the nation. And having said that also, I need to appeal to the labor force that those who render the services should also do it conscientiously and ensure that they add value to the nation. And that brings us to the one-party state. Very interesting. And I must commend the submissions of the Lineage Silk. I mean, truly speaking, I do not see why people are shouting about the moving towards one-party state as we speak. Under the law, we have about 18 registered political parties in Nigeria. And if majority of the prominent parties are now migrating to APC without any undue influence or duress, even if such is alleged, then it shows the weakness of the so-called opposition parties that are now defecting to the party they are supposed to be to put on her toes to deliver to the citizens. And when you look at the tsunami going on, then you go back to the leadership of APC. APC itself started in 2013, February, by what you can call poaching. Some wise politicians came together and poached for political bigwigs in New PDP, CPC, ACN, ABGA, and came together to form a formidable opposition. And strategically, that APC succeeded in taking over the Aso Villa because it was easy to synchronize. And at that point, when we were monitoring, there was a statement somebody made that you don't only learn from your victory, you always learn from your failure. And I think some of the parties that are now migrating have not learned from their failure. So, and it has come to amplify the fact that we have fluid ideology in the Nigerian democracy that are not concrete enough to make people hold to their gun and say, we stand for this and we stand for this. And again, on the flip side, you have personal ambition, and some are saying because law enforcement agents are trying to investigate some of the party bigwigs, so they are going to where their sins will be forgiven, according to Oshomole, one-time chairman of APC. Whatever the case may be, I do not see national interest playing out in all this. And like the Senior Silk mentioned, when you talk about governor defecting and migrating the political structure to another party, there is no express provision in the Constitution for the executive, perhaps for the legislators. So that is a matter that the National Assembly should look into. And beyond the National Assembly, because by virtue of Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, the National Assembly is empowered to make laws for the peace, orderliness, and good government in Nigeria. What about the party constitution? You see, I still wonder how Nyesom Wike has successfully operated in two parties till now, and he has not been able to be brought to accountability. So those are issues, and I think the tsunami is yet to settle down because there are still some releases from the grapevine that some parties are still seeking to move to where the light may shine for them towards 2027. So what I may say to the citizens, which the Senior Silk amplified, is that sovereignty belongs to the people, and it's in our constitution. But if you ask the people of Nigeria, what is the level of strength that they have to engage the government? They have protested in this country. They have complained.
The 1999 Constitution says, we the people.
Yes. And when you say we the people, there are owners of Nigeria and there are subscribers. So those are the issues. So more parties are expected, like it was mentioned. Imagine Senator Kawu of Kano South, even moving from NNPP. And that is just like a foretaste of some of them that may move, because if you have listened to the chairman of APC, Ganduje, he's so confident that more will come to
It says
APC.
2027. It's a done deal.
Yeah, and like some are saying, one party. No, we are not drifting towards a one-party state. We are just challenged by having weak, very weak and demobilized opposition. Again, because the internal democracy of the parties that should rise up to really play the opposition roles is in crisis. So I wish them the best. But for politicians, they may always have their way, while citizens may have their say. So I think it's for the electorates now to now shine their eyes and begin to strategize towards 2027. And my advice to APC is that you may not ignore the need for you to perform and make life more meaningful for Nigerians, because there are surprises in elections. So,
Okay, but Mr. Logan, I'd like you to talk about these privacy data issues being raised by the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission in line with the FCCPC Act of 2018. And now they are fining Meta $220 million. And Meta is saying, we are not going to pay.
You know, in a school of thought, that threat to vacate Nigeria is seen as whipping public sentiment, you know, as it's done in public relations. But from my research, the same fine was rolled out in Texas, I think about $1.5 billion.
Yeah.
They complied. And about 1.3 billion
India,
in,
South Korea,
exactly,
France.
in EU. Yeah. So, but Nigeria, knowing Nigeria also, it will surprise you that some lawyers will rise up again. So, you know, you remember the fine against MTN at that time. We've monitored all these things. So, yeah, you should look at what is going on in Rivers. Some women will wake up one day, we are in support of Ibas. Some will wake up the other day, we are in support of Wike. So what exactly do we want? But I stand for accountability. I think what the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission stands for is consumer protection. And Nigeria has a very weak profile when it comes to consumerism. So you need to protect your consumers. And again, beyond what is on ground, may I suggest, can we also begin to develop this technology and have a self-reliant economy, rather than having to, you know, depend on the meta parties as it's being referred to right now. But I do not think that we should be threatened. We should have a system that makes people to operate within the confines of our laws, because the allegations here now is talking about privacy, unfair privacy policies. And if that is the case, it's a serious matter. We should not take it lightly. But then, like the Commission has mentioned, their threat to vacate Nigeria may not stop the legal processes that may be taken against them. But how effective will those processes be is another question for another day. The basic principle
is that if you do business in any jurisdiction, you are bound to respect the laws of that jurisdiction.
That is if the laws
they cannot come and dictate to us.
That is if the laws are positioned in a way that they can be respected. I mean, I talk about that as being permissive. Is Nigeria not permissive? You know, I heard of an international businessman who just voluntarily left Nigeria. And his friends were wondering, why are you leaving? He said, from the way he's been operating and getting away with so many things, that the day they get him, he's not likely to survive it. That it's better now, with all the profits he has made, to just vacate this environment. And I think that is an issue we need to focus on. You must protect your citizens.
Nigeria is a dumping ground for anything.
I won't say that, but we are permissive.
That's what
Doctor.
you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that. Don't put it to me. You know, we have a permissive system here, and we should firm it up. And that is why, for all the cries against Donald Trump, I still see some, you know, firm positioning that, hey, this is what we stand for. Go by it. You know, so
Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing. After 100 days, he has introduced chaos, confusion,
100
uncertainty.
days of greatness, doctor. You know, and now in Africa, we are having another Trumpism in Togo. also.
Yeah, that wants to be president for life.
He's been.
Okay, are you celebrating that?
I'm not. I'm just telling us that we are imbibing some of these things into Africa. For 58
President of
years,
the Council of Ministers.
Yeah, for 58 years, that family has been in charge, and that's another issue for Africa. Africa will rather deal at the business level than concretize good governance, and I think we need paradigm shifts.
Mr. Logan, let's take another subject. We go again to Rivers State. In a show of defiance, women of Rivers State last Thursday staged a walkout on the wife of the sole administrator, Ibokete Ibas, during an empowerment program organized for them in the state. Tension flared as hundreds of the protesting women staged a dramatic walkout from the Renewed Hope Initiative empowerment program organized by the First Lady of Nigeria, Remi Tinubu. The event, which was billed to feature the presentation of empowerment items to 500 women in the state, turned chaotic the moment the wife of the sole administrator, Teresa Ibas, was invited to speak on behalf of the First Lady. Wow. This has been in the news. The women of River State, they say, well, if you behave anyhow, you will see anyhow. That's what Hilda Dokubo said on X, on social media. And that, look, they were told that it would be the wife of the governor that would address them, but that they don't recognize Mrs. Ibas. Now the federal Capital Territory Minister, through his spokesperson, issued a statement and saying that this was disrespectful to the president and his wife. But there's been a pushback by the women of Rivers State. They said they are not disrespecting Senator Remi Tinubu, but that they know who their First Lady is. And that First Lady is not Teresa Ibas. What do you think?
One of the things the learned Sult mentioned earlier is political education. And I think we should be able to decipher between the line. It's not only some women, let me put it that way, in Rivers State that are waking up to say, hey, come, what is the constitutionality of the present experience we are having? And in public relations, that's a huge embarrassment when you talk of planning events. But can it not also be said to be the perception of the people and playing out their true color? And a wise man said, if anyone decides to show you his or her true colors, you better believe them. It's like a small boy who was at the airport jumping around and the mom shouted on him, sit down there. And he sat down and looked at the mom. The mom, I'm sitting down physically, but in my heart, I'm standing up.
So like Yoruba people, when the Yoruba man is sitting down, he's standing up in his stomach.
So I think
you are a Yoruba man.
Yeah, the government should look at all this and see how this issue of River State can be resolved. You recall also how the First Lady herself was embarrassed through a song, "Na Your Mama Bidiso," and things like that. You see, these are reflective of the feelings of the people, and you don't handle it with force. And for the apology coming from Wike, is one of those who has brought River State to where it is and Fubara. And the women are saying we want Fubara. So I hope the message will resonate with the ongoing plans by the federal government. And I'm talking of the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and the National Assembly, who ratified the proclamation of state of emergency on River State, and see what can be done, because democracy has not changed in definition. It's the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And
just a moment. In the proclamation by President Tinubu, he never mentioned Teresa Ibaso. He never mentioned the wife. He appointed a sole administrator. The issue is that Ibokete Ibas now is introducing his wife as First Lady.
Doctor, there is no official office, constitutionally speaking, for the First Lady in Nigeria.
Okay.
It's by convention.
And so,
there is
are you saying Ibokete Ibas is right to impose his wife?
I'm not saying that. There is no constitutional office for first son. We've read about children of president flying in presidential jet just to go and take photographs. You see, in industrial psychology, you talk about reinforcement theory. So when these conventions start sneaking in and we don't nip them at the board, they become established as part of the system, though they are not part of the system. In the US, you know, doctor, the president cannot just bring guests to the White House and be entertained them with state funds. It's not allowed. There is a system that defines how you should operate. Even though Donald Trump is trying to...
If the president of the US eats too much in the White House, he will pay.
Exactly.
For what he has consumed.
You see, so these are issues in Nigeria. And that's why I'm saying, please, I know some people speak for government, they respond for government, they get angry for government. Please, read the body language of the people. Democracy is the government of the people, by the people and for the people. Let me say this. In public relations, an NGO just went to a community in the north and said, let's give them boreholes near their premises so that they won't go far to fetch water. And they discovered these women were not coming to fetch water there. Then they now decided to do a research, because in public relations, your campaign must start with research, continue, and end with research you evaluate. And they discovered the women did not need the borehole near home. Because when they go...
That's the process in project evaluation.
Exactly. When they go... Project so doctor,
evaluation.
And the women said, when we go far from home to fetch water, it's when we have time as women to gist and be free. The moment we enter that house, we are in captivity. So bringing the water near to us may appear like you are helping us, but indeed you are not helping us. And that is why before you enter a market, you must do your research and evaluate whether that entry will be profitable or not. Otherwise, you know. And we also learned about, and permit me to say this, a business person was trying to introduce condom into a particular nation and called it Sultan. And they told him, already is dead on arrival. Because the highest office in a particular section of that nation, the occupier is Sultan. And you are now bringing condom that you will call Sultan. So, and that is why I want people to be deep in evaluating situations. So the case of Rivers State will continue to generate embarrassment until the opinion leaders in that region, the political gladiators, and the peacemakers nationally will come together to resolve those issues. And there are still issues for resolution with the judiciary. The actions of the sole administrator in sacking some people in office, you know, so it's a serious matter. Just the same question people are asking that, fine, if by the Constitution mandate, the president can proclaim state of emergency, to what extent can he exercise that power? Can he also sack an executive governor and a whole legislative arm? So there are issues. So, but I hope that in the next 1.5 months or 2 months, the matter of Rivers is resolved and we begin to, you know, revert back to the democratic status quo. Well,
let's be hopeful. After all, the event at which this whole drama occurred, this renewed hope initiative program
to empower about 500.
Yes,
but I understand those to be empowered stayed back and things like that. You know.
Yeah, we were told the program still went on, but the protesters had made their point.
Exactly.
That there's something illegal and unconstitutional, and that they know who their first lady is, who the wife of the governor is. Well, let's go to Yobe State, where terrorists of the Islamic State, West Africa province, stormed Bunigari town in Yobe State on Friday and razed down a part of the 27th Brigade Tactical Headquarters military formation there. The attack came 2 days after a meeting of the Northeast Governors Forum in Damaturu, the state capital, where the governors deliberated on security issues, poverty, and poor road network in the region. Bunigari is less than 7 kilometers from Buniyadi, where the Nigerian Army Special Forces School is located. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu spent the last 2 days in Katsina State, northwest of Nigeria, where he addressed troops of the Nigerian Armed Forces. The president said he was deeply humbled by their courage, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to the peace and security of Nigeria. He told the troops that the fight in Katsina and across the country is not just a battle for territory, but a battle for the soul of Nigeria. The president also addressed a stakeholders meeting with the heads of security agencies to discuss issues concerning insecurity in Katsina State and the rest of the country. The president was on a confidence-building, trust-building trip to Katsina State, in Yobe State. Bandits, terrorists, they were so confident they stormed a military formation. If you were to see the actual pictures, they killed the soldiers, they destroyed arms and ammunition, infrastructure, and they got away with it.
Firstly, let me commend the effort of the Nigerian Army, the Joint Task Force, and all the efforts, and to wish them the best. But you see, I have always spoken about the fundamentals beyond the symptoms. What we are seeing are symptoms. I mentioned earlier that the nation came out to say we have identified 400 sponsors of Boko Haram. And I don't know how many the citizens have identified or have been brought to justice. And as long as the sponsors are in place, terrorism is not leaving this country. And I'm very sorry to announce that, because one of the things you take out...
As a Christian, you have lost hope?
I've not lost hope, The Bible says, Christ in me, the hope of glory, is there. I'm going somewhere. And let me come now to the northern leadership. I love every part of Nigeria. I've been to almost all the regions. I mean, all. I was in Augi after Argungu in Sokoto State. I've been in Maiduguri, Jos. I was in Tafa Balewa Tomb in Borchi. I've been around. And wonderful people, great hospitality. But I sit here today to say there are also some wicked elements who, for selfish reasons, have sown the seed of chaos. And what the Bible says is that if you sow the wind of storm, you will harvest whirlwind. And that is what we are having now. Now the North can talk about insecurity, talk about poverty, talk about poor road network. But I did a research. Out of about 16 leadership slots in Nigeria since we became a republic in 1963 after our 1960 political independence from the colonialists, about 9 of the 16 have been managed by northern leadership. What have we achieved for that region? When the Boko Haram started around 2000, I was one of those shouting that if somebody wakes up to say he's against Western education, you must take him seriously. Here we are today. The solution to the insecurity in the North is in the North. So I'm challenging the leaders to come together and go after the sponsors. If you can take out the oxygen, the fire will go out. And that is the spirit of fire extinguishing. I won't say more than that, than to say, sir, that come to the Southwest. You saw when some Yoruba people were coming, Yoruba nation. You saw what happened. They demolished their houses. The Western region rose against them. That no, we cannot give you breathing space in our community. Have we not seen, influential sheikh going to take photographs with these bandits? The former governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, said they are in communication with them, that they know them. Recently, Senator in the National Assembly said they know them, that the government knows them. So if the government knows them and they are ravaging the nation, best wishes. But what Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended says, that security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. And on that note, I wish the northern people the security towards economic prosperity. And when that is achieved, the poverty will disappear. And they also will begin to enjoy the goodness of life. Like the whole of the country, we deserve peace, we deserve unity, we deserve progress.
Mr. Logan, we have just about a minute left, but you know, this is something we should talk about. President Donald Trump has promised that he's just getting started, and as he marked the radical and vengeful beginning of a presidency that has shaken the world and destabilized several aspects of public life in the United States. Basking in the adulation of cheering supporters in Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, right? Okay. Trump touted the most successful first 100 days of any administration in the history of America. Even as polls show that Americans are becoming disenchanted with the economic and political tumult. Trump said he missed the campaign train and launched with visible relish into a speech that sounded more like that of a candidate than a head of state. The other thing that Trump has done this week is that he posted a picture showing himself as the Pope using AI, and this has attracted criticism from Catholics protesting that generated image, you know, insults their faith and insults, you know, the Christian faith at a time when the Pope has just been buried and a new Pope is about to be chosen. What do you think? Very quickly.
Donald Trump, since you said, Doctor, that you have just 1 minute, so let me speak in parable. Okay. When President Muhammadu Buhari was coming for the second term, he said if he is allowed, we will know the difference. And we knew the difference. So by the time Donald Trump is through, Americans and the world will know the difference. And on that note, best wishes to America and the world as the man is shaking the table. And many countries will benefit from this shaking. But many who are not wise and choose to remain weak may be victims. But I want my nation to benefit. So okay. Trump is Trump, any day, anytime.
We already
know,
know
the difference.
Anyway, you've been watching This Day Live, a Sunday talk show here on Arise News. Thank you very much, Mr. Logan. I'm Ruben Abati from our entire team here in Lagos. It's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.